might have Flap and the rich lady under your spell, but it's gonna take more than that to impress me.
Spoiler warning for the Resident Evil series. Also, this video is just pure speculation. So yesterday right before bed, the thought of the leaks of Resident Evil 4 Remake going through development issues made me think of something interesting. Seeing things like the Los Illuminados symbol in the new PlayStation ad, and all the Resident Evil 4 push lately from stuff like Infinite Darkness mentioning Ashley in the Resident Evil 4 VR port this month. Resident Evil 4 Remake surely was pushed for a 2022 release date at one point if it started development Indiana 2018, like the original leak said. But with it most likely being pushed back to 2023 or later, is it because of something else besides the pandemic and Resident Evil 3 Remake's reception? Last year's leaks caused backlash from Code Veronica fans, and how the leaks of a possible Resident Evil 4 Remake last year caused them to take issue with Resident Evil 4 being next to get the remake treatment, and how Capcom has been silent on anything Resident Evil 4 Remake related. Now of course that could be because they need to market Resident Evil 4 VR for the Oculus Quest 2 for now. It could also be because of what I thought of yesterday, and that Resident Evil 4 Remake might be going through lots of reworks right now, because it was originally Retconning Code Veronica. Resident Evil 3 Remake, the Nemesis changed to tie it closer to Resident Evil 4. The ending of Resident Evil 3 could be interpreted in many ways as well. This could be Jill at the end with a broken vaccine container, or maybe it could be Claire, or some other woman we don't know about yet. Either way, I think this last scene would have been used to connect Resident Evil 3 Remake with Resident Evil 4 Remake a bit better, since M2 made Resident Evil 3 Remake and leaks said they were making Resident Evil 4 Remake as well. However, newer leaks in 2021 claim M2 is no longer as involved in the Resident Evil 4 Remake due to the reception Resident Evil 3 Remake got, and Capcom put Capcom Division 1 on it. However, what if the Resident Evil 4 Remake scramble is instead of, because like I said earlier, of the fact that Resident Evil 4 Remake was originally going to retcon Code Veronica and change up the story, and now Capcom is scrambling to change it so a Code Veronica remake could still be a reality one day. While I don't believe this Reddit leak from a few months ago, but Resident Evil 4 Remake was supposedly going to have Claire in it and Leon having a beard lol. But I could believe at one point Capcom did want to have Claire in a Resident Evil 4 Remake, and doing so would have Code Veronica retcon from the timeline and have her story pick up in Resident Evil 4 Remake, and along with Leon's, and the reason Claire got the broken vaccine container was to prove of Umbrella's evil work. Code Veronica and Resident Evil 4 both take place somewhere in Europe, and follow up on each classic Resident Evil 2 character's story. When Code Veronica came out, the Resident Evil franchise was only about 4 years old, and when Resident Evil 4 came out, the Resident Evil franchise was only about 9 years old. Also, when Code Veronica came out and while Resident Evil 4 was in development, Capcom couldn't have known Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 0 were going to be mild commercial flops on the Gamecube, so they couldn't have known the direction the final version of Resident Evil 4 would take the franchise. Having Wesker be the main villain in Resident Evil 5 and have his story end at that game, it would be weird having Wesker just be saved as a background character in Resident Evil 4 with very little involvement. Imagine a Resident Evil 4 where Wesker doesn't play a huge role, but a pretty significant one to set him up in Resident Evil 5 much better, and not be saved for assignment data or separate ways. I could see a version of Resident Evil 4 Remake that ties into the main series much better by having Claire and Leon crossing paths in Europe, and Claire is searching for Wesker while Leon is searching for Ashley, and they end up coming face to face with Wesker at one point of the game. Wesker would be in Resident Evil 4 in certain parts helping Ada find what he needs and get away at the end, and Claire would tell Chris about this as he just started the BSAA. There you go, Code Veronica no longer is canon, which would have made the reception to a possible Resident Evil 4 Remake even more mixed. Also, this all works if it's Jill instead of Claire in the Resident Evil 3 Remake ending, and maybe she's the one who goes to Europe, and it's instead Claire who is working with Chris on starting the BSAA before the events of Resident Evil 4. Either way, all Resident Evil remakes so far have had lore changes and retcons here and there, and with Resident Evil 4 being so isolated from the main Resident Evil story, I can see this remake having the most changes, and also because of how big Resident Evil 4 is. So maybe the reason Resident Evil 4 Remake supposedly going through so many changes right now in development is because they need to rework what they already made so it doesn't retcon Code Veronica, so that could be remade one day.